Boy, that psalm hit a little harder than it used to. So, all right, I want to go ahead and address the elephant on the coffee table right now. So don't everybody shout me down. Let me get through what I need to say, okay? There were some events last week that have deeply troubled some people, right? Some people, I may have seen some tears, right? Some people were happy with the happenings, but now don't get rowdy yet. Some people were happy with what happened. Some people, various stages of joyful and relieved. Some people were devastated, right? And wherever you find yourself, I want to tell you something. It's just college football, folks. Okay? There's always next season. Okay? Being a Jags fan for the last 25 years has taught me anything. It's going to be okay. You thought I was talking about something else? Come on. No, if the events of maybe something that happened earlier in the week have troubled you or elated you, it's just an election, guys. It's not the end of the world. All right? There's a term that we hear on social media, which you hear often. All right? It's kind of insulting, but it's kind of important. All right? That phrase is go outside and touch grass. Okay? Now, in the social media context, and really in our lives in the world, right, it's really easy to get tunnel vision. It's really easy to get caught up in a place where the media, the screens, the tablets, the televisions are just bombarding us with one idea after another. And it's very easy for people who are immersed in that to really get sucked into tunnel vision and become terrified, to become depressed, to become riddled with anxiety, right? And the response that's come up on social media of all places is go outside and touch grass, right? Get away from the screens, whether they're large or small. Go out, breathe in some fresh air, and touch grass. Realize that there's things outside that are important, that are worthwhile. And I say that because it's very important to reorient yourself to what is essential, right? And to let the things that are fleeting and passing be fleeting and passing, and be mindful of the things that are eternal, right? I will admit, okay, clergy will tell you half the time we're preaching to ourselves, right? This morning, something popped up at the last minute that irritated the tar out of me. I got so frustrated and so mad. And I closed off a door and I stood there and I was like, okay, come on, pull it together. And I heard, touch grass. That's when I said, you can be such a jerk, Anyway, so this is not just for you people. It's for me most directly, right? But the Old Testament and the gospel today really focus that on, in essence, using very modern language, touching grass, reorienting on what's important, right? So we start off with a passage from 1 Kings chapter 17 about the widow of Zarephath, right? Now, what we get prior to the passage is that Elijah has called for a famine in the land. He has called for there to be no rain, and in that day and age, that means there's no produce, right? And it's kind of like when the gas prices go up, the grocery prices go up a week later. When there's nothing for the critters to chew on, the critter prices go up shortly thereafter, right? So as he calls for this famine in the land, everybody starts suffering. And he goes to this widow, he goes to the widow and says to her, bring me some water that I may drink, and bring me a morsel of bread in your hand. Now this woman is starving. Not only is she starving, but her son is starving. And she and her household are going to die. And she says, as the Lord your God lives, I do not have bread. Only a handful of flour in a little bin and some oil in a jar. See, I'm gathering some sticks that I may go prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat and die. All right? Now, let's be honest. This is not an unreasonable assessment of her situation. It's not like, she's going to have some massive Instacart order delivered to her front porch in the next hour or so. She is not exactly caught in the whirlwind of everything that's going on and coming to an unrealistic assessment. She only has this much food. There's no hope of getting any more, and she's going to die. But how did she greet Elijah? As the Lord your God lives, she knows he's a man of God. She knows he follows the Lord, right? And so he tells her, go do what you're going to do, but give it to me. She says, okay. And he prophesies over her that her oil's not going to run out, her flour's not going to run out, she's going to be fed. And throughout the entire famine, the oil never ran out, the flour never ran out. She had food for herself, for her son, for her house, the entire famine, because she was providing for the prophet, right? Elijah was fed, the woman was fed, her son was fed, everybody got some food to eat. But then Elijah goes off, does some work, he's gone for a season. Her son gets sick, and he dies. And Elijah comes back to her, and she says, what have I to do with you, O man of God? Have you come to bring to me remembrance of my sin and to kill my son? All right. And Elijah goes to her son. He prays for him, and he gets better. He is completely healed. He's brought back from the dead. Right? And again, she knows that he's a miracle worker. She knows that he serves a God who has provided for her throughout this entire famine. And she gets hit with something that is awful. Her son has either died or is at the brink of death. There's not a lot of coming back. She can't, call 911, have the ambulance take him to the best hospital in town. There were no hospitals. And medicine at the time, oh, geez, ooh. But the man of God comes to her and says, I got this. In spite of her crisis, which are not minor crises, in spite of her crises, Elijah comes to her and says, God is bigger than this. I have this. I want to turn quickly to the gospel. The gospel kind of has two parts of it. And one, I'm just going to address the clergy very quickly. So beware the scribes who desire to go around in long robes and greetings in the marketplaces and the best seats in the synagogues and the best places at the feast. Right? This should hit each of us right between the eyes. And that's why every year it's so very important that we get down on our hands and knees and wash the feet of the congregation. That we remember that Christ said, I have come not to be served, but to serve, and to give my life as a ransom for many. That's why it's so important that when those times come around, you let us get down on our hands and knees and wash your feet. Trust us, we don't like it any more than you do. But it's really important that the guys who walk around in the long robes and have the really good seats up front remember what they're called to do. They touch grass, touch some feet, and remember that we're called to serve. And then Jesus changes the topic very, very abruptly. Now Jesus sat in the treasury and saw how the people came and put money into the treasury. And many who are rich put in much. And one poor widow came and threw in 2 mites, which make a quadrans. Like the version that Father Allen read that said she put in two small coins that put together equal a penny. And he called his disciples to himself and said to them, assuredly I say to you that this poor widow has put in more money than those who have given to the treasury, than all those who have given to the treasury, for they put in out of their abundance. But she, out of her poverty, put in all that she had, her whole livelihood. Now, I'm not saying you need to give everything you have to the church, although they did in Acts of the Apostles. I'm not saying that, right? But we've often heard it said that the church doesn't need your money, right? God doesn't need your money. He's got plenty. He's covered. The church doesn't need your money. God will provide for the church. You need to give so that you can go outside and touch grass and be reoriented to what's significant. Because it's very easy to look at the checkbook. It's very easy to look at the bills. It's very easy to look at the Christmas catalogs this year and to be completely overwhelmed. But when we give to the church, when we sit there and say, yes, I know that there's this and there's that and there's this and there's that, but every good thing I have comes from the Lord, and I'm going to give back 1/10 to him so that I can never forget that every good gift I have comes from the Lord. That reorients us to what is essential. Yes, there's bills. There's lots of bills. There's groceries. There's things that are more and more expensive. There's Christmas coming up. All of these things are true. It was true there was a famine in the land. It was true her son was sick to death. But God. Yes, it's true that we have all these things that are going on in our lives. But God. Giving does not happen so that the work of the church can be done. The work of the church is going to be done. Giving is done so that you can remember that God is first. That God will provide for you. That God will take care of you. These things help us reorient. All right? Everybody has to sit there and look at their bills and their mortgages and their rents and say, man, I got to get this paid first because this is most important. But every good gift that we have comes from the Lord. And that's the highest priority for us. So I encourage you, go outside and touch grass. Reorient yourself onto what is absolutely essential. Make sure that as you are doing these things, you set aside a part of your budget to keep in mind that God is the source of everything that you have and to bring him honor and glory. Because those things that are outside, those things that shout at us very loudly and sometimes very justifiably, are not the priorities for us. The priority is to follow the Lord. The priority is to honor him in all that we do. And the more that we do that, the more that the other things fall into their own places. All right? I'm not a person who says, oh, have faith and sow your seed and expect to have a Lamborghini in a year. Once again, I couldn't even get into a Lamborghini, much less get out of one. Don't get a picture. But God does provide. The psalm says, my Lord shall provide all my needs according to his riches and glories. And one of the things that I really need is a constant reminder that I need to keep him first. As we head into that time of year which has been dubbed holiday season, let's remember that throughout all of these holy days, the most important thing is to keep God first. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.